Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Board of Franklin County Commissioners meeting on Wednesday, March the 7th. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Howard?
Present.
Commissioner Waymire?
Present.
Chair Renaud?
Present.
Vice Chair Oglesby?
Present.
Commissioner Dunn?
Present.
Okay, if you would please stand for our Pledge of Allegiance, followed by our invocation.
God of power, God of wisdom, God of peace, we call upon your name this morning because we are one nation, under God, indivisible, because of the unity that you bring and the wisdom that you bring. We pray your knowledge over the leaders of this city, that you would give them your wisdom, that you would give them your leadership, and out of that, that we would thrive, that we would be a community that people look to and know that your presence is felt here. We pray that you would be ruler over this time and authority over these lives. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Thank you. Okay, under correspondence, organizational business, consider March the National Nutrition Month. Laura, you want to come up here? You want to say anything about the proclamation before we get to it?
Sure, I can. Thank you. So March is National Nutrition Month. So as our Work Well Committee, we just thought it would be nice to recognize this as a month and draw people's attention to it as we're really working towards trying to form our wellness plan for our specific employees. We know that nutrition is such a big part of our overall wellness. Poor eating has been linked to a number of chronic diseases, and that's something that we will be focusing on as we work through our wellness plan and our activities and so forth, and you'll see that as we go through this year and the years to come. So we just really appreciate you recognizing National Nutrition Month this month, and also your great support in our efforts with wellness and at the health department, but looking at all employees' wellness and seeing that's a benefit to provide productive employees. So,
Okay. See you Work Well Committee members with you there, huh?
Cassie and Joy are here. Yes.
Good. And I see some of that email stuff that we're doing in our employees. I think it's great, and particularly as you can look down the weeks and months ahead what we're going to be focusing on. I'll read the proclamation, and then I'll ask the board here if they will make a motion to approve making March the Nutrition Month. It says, the proclamation is 1801, whereas food is the substance by which life is sustained, and whereas the type, quality, and amount of food that individuals consume each day plays a vital role in their overall health and physical fitness, and whereas there is a need for continuing nutrition education and a wide-scale effort to enhance healthy eating practices. Now, therefore, the Board of Commissioners of Franklin County, Kansas does hereby proclaim March 2018 as Franklin County Nutrition Month and encourage all citizens to join the campaign and become concerned about their nutrition and nutrition of others in the hope of achieving optimum health for both today and tomorrow. So we have a motion then to do that.
Make a motion that we approve proclamation 1801. Second.
Commissioner Howard?
Yes.
Commissioner Waymire?
Yes.
Commissioner Oglesby?
Yes.
Commissioner Dunn?
Yes.
Chair Renaud?
Yes. And we have a copy of the proclamation signed by the board.
Thank you so much.
Yes. Thank you for the work that your committee does. Very good that the committee does this for us.
Good to see you again. Thank you.
Derek, anything else under correspondence? Okay, anybody signed up for public comment? Then we go to our consent agenda. Consider and approve the Franklin County Commission meeting minutes for February 28th, the study session minutes for March the 5th, and consider approved tax change orders and a positive $593.14. I have a motion then for the consent agenda.
Make the motion.
Second.
Mr. Waymire?
Yes.
Commissioner Oglesby?
Yes.
Commissioner Dunn?
Yes.
Commissioner Howard?
Yes.
Chair Renaud.
Yes. Okay, our first item of business, consider for approval amending the county zoning regulations to define accessory and agricultural structures.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. As you've indicated, this is a request to consider an amendment to the county's zoning regulations. This was brought to the attention of staff several months ago, and we did have numerous discussions with our planning commission relative to amendments, and they agreed that it would be appropriate at this time to consider amending portions of that to clarify some of the definitions. There seemed to be a lot of confusion between what was an ag exempt building, because we do not get building permits for true agricultural structures that are used solely for the purposes of agriculture, and to distinguish those from accessory structures that are more in tune with the uses associated with the residential developments, and also to address building setbacks. This has been an issue that's been ongoing for some period of time, and I've tracked the number of variances that we have received and approved during that time span, which is some 14 years. We've only denied 2 with the Board of Zoning Appeals. All the rest of them have been approved. So essentially, we have amended the regulations without benefit of going through the appropriate procedures for amending the zoning regulations. Those that want to comply did, and those that didn't necessarily want to or couldn't were filing variances. So the differences between what was happening out there was pretty significant. If you're willing to pay the $270 and go to a public hearing, it was probably going to be approved. But if you adhered to the building setback requirements, you were approved anyway, and that kind of set up a double standard. So we had the Planning Commission visit this, and one of the big difficulties that we had during that process was the comprehensive plan has focused as one of its primary policies the rural character and sustaining and maintaining that rural character throughout the county. As part of that, their lot sizes were a relevant factor in that it also related to the zoning. In other words, the larger the lot, the larger the setbacks requirements. And that was to be able to maintain this rural character where we didn't have housing stacked on top of other dwelling units. As a consequence, the Planning Commission felt that it was important that we address this issue, but on the other hand, it was difficult to balance it to where we were still maintaining an element of this rural character, but allowing some reduction in those setbacks so that it could accommodate a lot of the proposed developments that otherwise could not meet the building setbacks. This was particularly for side yards. And with that, we did hold a public hearing then after they decided they really didn't need a series of workshops on this. They felt it was pretty straightforward. So at their last meeting, we did give consideration, and they have forwarded a recommendation to you to amend the county zoning regulations to adjust and clarify the definitions of accessory structures and accessory uses, as well as agricultural structures and agricultural uses, and also to modify the setback requirements for our zoning districts that are agricultural and residential districts. We didn't modify anything relative to the industrial or commercial because those setbacks were more in tune with not the rural character, but more in tune with the fact that they would be more suburban or urban in nature. And that being said, I have nothing further to add unless any of you have questions.
Did anyone show up at the public hearing to question this?
Actually, we didn't really have anyone that was present at this. I've had a few phone calls over that period of time, but we didn't really have anybody at the public hearing.
A residential estate district, would that be like Wheatland or Shawnee Estates or something like that? Is that a,
No. The residential estate starts off at a 5-acre minimum.
okay,
So it's more in tune with land divisions where you own acreage and you're going to give your daughter 5 acres or 10 acres to build a home on. And we've done many, many of those, as you're well aware of, through the rezonings that we have done in the past, 15 years. But Shawnee Estates and Wheatland are in the R3, which is a single-family residential zone. That allows them to go down to a minimum of 3 acres.
right.
That 3 acres is associated with the fact that 3 acres is the minimum that we allow on-site sanitation.
And the reason I ask that question is, can those subdivisions have their own deed restrictions that would be different than these, and be, which one supersedes which one, or how would that work?
They can have deed restrictions, but the county's requirements are still going to prevail. They can have greater setbacks than what we have, and if they choose to enforce them, that's fine. We would only enforce up to the limits that are established in our regulations, but they cannot go less than our regulations.
And that's why I asked that question, because your residential structure is 25 on the side and ours is 50. But the county can enforce theirs, and I'm not sure the subdivision has much enforcement with theirs, so.
Well, that's entirely up to those people that are left to enforce these, and unfortunately, there many times aren't property owners associations established that do the enforcement after the sale of a number of the lots has occurred and the developer is no longer
Right.
present.
Okay. Any other questions?
Larry, I got a call from a lady from actually Douglas County, near the county line, and I guess there's a Senate bill right now about chicken farms.
Yes.
Are you familiar with that?
Somewhat.
Anyway, she said they're considered 333,333 chickens, 100 feet setback from the property line and a quarter mile from a residence. How would the state, would they take precedent over anything county would do?
I think that's probably a legal issue, but frankly, I think that would fall within the same provisions as currently associated with confined feeding facilities. And the Supreme Court of the state of Kansas has prohibited basically counties from being involved with these confined feeding facilities. That started with the feedlots out in western Kansas, and that was the court case that established that. So it's really left to the Department of Agriculture, and I suppose to some small element, KDHE, as to what setbacks are necessary. And again, it's going to relate to animal units and the size of the parcel that's being utilized. But I don't think that we would have an opportunity to intervene here and set our own regulations. I look at this as trying to set a number of animal units and the equivalency of a number of chickens to a cow and a calf operation, for instance, or a number of dairy cattle that are confined in a certain area. I know that it takes a hog and a half to equal one dairy cow in terms of the way that they're evaluated with the state in looking at the confined feeding facilities, and they all fit under that same cloth. So I think that's exactly what the state law is doing here, is trying to put a handle on the number of chickens that are going to be equivalent to the thresholds established by the state for these confined feeding facilities. And that being said, it's probably going to go right out of the hands of the county. It'll go back to the state.
Okay. Anything else for Larry? If not, we consider a motion then to resolution approving the amendments to the county zoning regulations.
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
Second.
Just to clarify, the motion then to approve the attached resolution approving amendments to the county zoning regulations to define accessory and agricultural structures and to clarify building setbacks for accessory structures.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Oglesby?
Yes.
Commissioner Dunn?
Yes.
Commissioner Howard?
Yes.
Commissioner Waymire?
Yes.
Chair Renaud.
Yes.
Randy, just to remind you, we do have sample motions now included on the cover sheet for the convenience of the board. So if there's a question on what it is, what motion we're making, it's right.
It's already there.
It
All right,
is.
good. That way we're
Well-
going to assume that what's written down is what everybody's making that a motion.
Well, I would request that you just read what is written down into the record so that,
Okay.
but that's why we put it there so that you can do that.
Okay. Okay, consider for approval the November, December 2017 EMS activity report and the 2017 EMS end-of-year report. Nick?
Good morning, Commissioners.
Morning.
To get us caught up with the end of 2017, I have a bunch of data for you we'll go through. I'll go through the November, December pretty quick, and spend quite a bit of time probably on the year end. So in November, we had 285 calls. It was 9.5 calls a day, 3,277 calls for the year, which is up 41 from the previous year. If you remember back in about April, we were up about 100 and some, so it kind of leveled off there towards the end of the year. We did have good deposits in 93,291.34 with 1,049,349.64 in deposits, which is 224,000 over what we estimated. So very good year-end or revenues to that point. We are sending 16,334.65 to the state collections, 2,815.60 to Midwest collections, and had adjustments of 56,867.94. We transported 173 patients out of 284 to hospitals, 4 back to nursing homes, residents. This is page 5, sorry. We did have one airport pickup from the airport helicopter pickup. That's when Ransom was doing construction, so we had to pick helicopters up there. We had a total of 69 refusals, so a 24% refusal rate, so it was a little bit higher there than what we'd seen in the year. Is there any questions on the November one? I got a lot of files here. December. December, we had 290 calls, bringing us up to 3,567 for the year, finishing us at 28 calls higher than we were in 2016. So we were up a little bit, but it kind of leveled out, like I said. Had a smaller deposit, but still over what we needed, 80,154.07, giving us a year total of 1,129,503.71. So $304,500 over what we thought we was going to be at. So it did end up pretty good. Had an adjustment report of 42,063, state set off of $18,355.31 and $3,254.20 to Midwest Collections, and 9 move-ups. Jumping back to page 5 again, we did transport 209 patients to the hospitals. We had 2 that went to other facilities. Then we did have one, we had one when we do blood draws at the station that goes up to the station, so we had 1 blood draw come to the station. Total refusals of 62 for a 21%, so it was back down to about normal for December. Is there any questions on the December report? All right. We can now jump into the big one. As always, I started out, I'm going to talk about transports, township reports, receiving facilities, our revenues, and then get into the types of calls we ran. So starting on page 4, that's a busy chart there on the top. It goes back to 2010, so it gives us a 7-year average of the call volume for each month. Do you guys see that?
I'm not sure we have.
Are you on the emergency communications year-end report?
No, I'm on the one I thought that was Franklin County EMS.
We have December. We don't have any attachments on the
I
year.
don't have a year-end report either, Nick.
Okay.
So why don't you just present it to the board? Discuss it.
Okay. So basically, we had 3,567 calls in the end, but you can't see, but we trended up a lot over the last few years. So it's been getting busier as we go. I'll jump into this one. In 2017, we had a total of 3,567 calls, 2,365 transports to hospitals. We did transport 1,600 patients to Ransom Memorial, so we had quite a few patients go there. 42 patients to the nursing homes. And to be honest, Derek, probably with some of this, can I just put it next week and we can do the visuals, because a lot of it is visuals, sir.
I'll have Joy run down and make copies of all
Okay.
of this. Why don't you transition over to the emergency communications? When she gets back, we can double back around.
All right.
Have a copy of all of it.
All right, sorry about that.
Okay.
It's
we had
just
the
a lot of
November-
visual stuff that are, thank you, Derek.
Derek, you want us to go ahead and approve the November, December, or?
You just took it.
Since we've already walked through the November, December reports, I would request we make a motion approving that. Then we can transition. It'll be a little bit cleaner at that point to come back and do the year end, so.
So I have a motion then to approve the November, December 2017 adjustments and collections for Franklin County MS.
Make the motion. I would second that.
Commissioner Dunn?
Yes.
Commissioner Howard?
Yes.
Commissioner Waymire?
Yes.
Commissioner Oglesby?
Yes.
Chair Renaud?
Yes. Okay, then the next item on the agenda, Nick, would be the 2016-17 Emergency Communication Report and January 2017 report.
Okay. You guys can see this one, right? Well, I just want to make sure, sorry. All right, so 2017, or 16, 17, what I did when I went in there was the first thing I wanted to do is kind of see some data on where we were at. Sarah and I pulled numbers from as far back as we could with the Tyler system. So if you look in 2017, the dispatch center, and these are cards that are put into CAD. These aren't the number of calls that come in. This is actual cards put into CAD for services. So we pulled calls for service that they monitored. There's 45,583 calls for service put in, which averages 124 calls a day that the dispatchers were putting in. 2016, they did 43,845, which is an average of 19 calls a day. So you can see they were up 1,741 calls for 2017. I'm gonna skip past the next part of that chart, and we're gonna talk about it on the next few pages anyway, so we'll just go into that. So on page 3, what I did was broke out the call data for each agency. So you can see down there the agencies that we dispatch for, put calls in. Ottawa Police Department was the highest user in 2017 with 17,927. Sheriff's Department was 12,721. Then it went to the Wellsville Police Department with 7,162, and then you can see EMS was 3,884. Then it goes to Ottawa City Fire of 2007, and then it goes down from there. So really breaking out where the most of our cards are getting put in, how we're monitoring. The next page is a percentage report, and to be able to bring 18 into it, I broke it down to percentage. So for 2018, that's only the percentage of January. It'll grow, but it'll be a living document. But it shows you that the percentages throughout are staying pretty consistent of what the users are, where they're at, that kind of stuff to give us some good ideas. 5, that is a call time chart. So as you can see where those peak, that's where the calls increase and being put in. So you can see at about 9 o'clock in the morning, we start getting busy, and it follows that trend till about 11 o'clock at night. So we can see that there's a peak times for the dispatch, which gives us some good data on staffing and that kind of stuff. So jumping into the next page, which is the January 2018 report. This is where I went back and broke down apples to apples with 17 and 18, and they pretty much trended identical to everything else. It shows Ottawa Police Department with 1,414, the Sheriff's Department with 976, Wellsville being the third highest, EMS, and then fire. So this is only the start of some of the data we're looking at. Sarah and I have met with some of the next gen 911 places, looking at what the future looks like. And when we go that route, we'll be able to actually break down call data to see how many calls come in on a 911 line, how many come in on administrative lines, and be able to pull reports that way. We could actually break that down to as far as how many calls each dispatcher would answer. So we could, and those reports will be available when we move forward with that. So we'll be able to get some good data on what the dispatch center looks like and what we need to be doing for the future growth as far as staffing. So that's the report I kind of wanted to give you to look at. And is there anything else you'd like to see from those reports?
I have a question on the Kansas Highway Patrol calls. I think it's set at 19 or something. Is that the state dispatching most of that? Why are we getting like 19 of their?
And I honestly don't have an answer for that.
And they're obviously getting dispatched more than 19 times. So why are we handling a small amount of their dispatch?
I don't know. On some of that, I haven't broke into that where I will exactly know. I can get you those answers, but my assumption would be that we have had some point where we put them on a call for service or something where they're a card that we're monitoring since they're in our county, and I don't know. So that will be something
Or
I can
for accident or something along those lines, probably.
That would be because these are only calls for service, so anything we put a card in for that person. So I don't know if they tie it to a card and it shows up. You got anything on that, Jeff?
Speak to that. The troopers that are assigned to this county also have our radios in their cars, and if it is a call that if it involves like an 18-wheeler or something like that, a commercial vehicle, if there's a trooper available, we try to get them to work those crashes. That's one of their areas that they want to concentrate on. So if we receive that call and there's a trooper available, they're in service on our net, then they would dispatch them and get them assigned to that call. And that's how those come
So
about.
do we have to go through the state and have them dispatch them, or can we dispatch them directly?
We dispatch them, and then they contact the state to let them know that they're out on a call in Franklin County. So,
Thank you, sir.
yeah.
think one of the things that's very interesting is the call time report. You'll recall when we discussed the transition and the staffing, we've discussed a couple potential float positions. And this really helps us identify when it would be best served to place a float position on a shift. And so it looks like, you know, there's some peaks about 14 and 1,500 hours, and then again at 21 and 2,200. So that really helps us identify when we need to have the most staff. And as Nick said, this is really the beginning of the data. The more we get dug into this, the more we'll present to all of you. And just, I guess, to let you all know, it's our intention to give this same presentation to the City of Ottawa on a monthly basis as well, given that they're a major funding partner in this. And so we'll be given a couple reports, and certainly Nick asked, but if there's any more info that you all want to see, let us know, because odds are we can access it.
And some of those calls that are at 10 o'clock to 11 o'clock spike in there, Nick, or from past knowledge, or probably some of those are calls for transfer from
If you put,
Ransom to somewhere else, because that's the end of the billing cycle and they move them on down the road if they
if you overlay that, it actually mimics EMS's quite a bit. It's kind of crazy, which I'm sure if you put it over the top of Sheriff's Department, you'd probably overlay the same and see it. But yeah, those spikes at noon and stuff, we have those spikes there on the EMS side.
Yeah, I am amazed that 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock is higher than 5 and 6 o'clock, you know, with thinking of work traffic and stuff like that. But I guess that's not necessarily a lot of the calls that are not necessarily just traffic accidents.
Well, a lot of your calls are going to be, at that time, are going to be motel checks, they're going to be building checks, things of that sort, that it'll be a number and it'll be a call, but it isn't going to be a call that may tie them up for a long time. It may just be a quick call in for a building check and get a number. So that's several of your calls at that time in the morning is going to come in.
And that's correct. As Commissioner Harris said, those numbers can be something of an officer-initiated call where the officer puts that call in. The thing is, dispatch is still monitoring that and doing welfare checks on those officers or whoever puts it in to make sure everything's up. But it could be, and with the more we're using the mobile data terminals, there's quite a few more self-initiations going out where they're doing the building checks or whatever, and those do go into that as a call. So being able to put this data with actual 911 calls will be interesting too, to see how that mirrors.
I think one of the pieces of the information I'd like to see, Nick, if it's possible, and I don't know if it is to know those calls that require both dispatchers to be engaged at the same time on that specific call, which I know if a 911 call comes in, they both pick up if they're available to do so. I know that sometimes one's doing one thing and one's doing another because of the nature of those calls, and it requires both of them. That might be important to know going forward as far as what we need staffing as well, I think.
And I'll try to figure out how I
That's
can track some
possible
of
or
that.
not, but if you understand what I'm
I
asking.
know exactly what you mean. Those bigger calls where you might tie both of them up.
Right.
Well, the thing that I see the most and is, for some reason, and it's an EMS thing we have in this county, if one time when one call comes in for a medical treatment, within 5 or 10 minutes we have another one. So we've had quite a few times where those dispatchers are tied up on 2 911 calls, and medical calls just seem to take the majority of their time when they're on the phone with them talking through. So those are the ones that really tie us up when we get 2 of those at the same time. And if you listen to the scanners, it happens. You can almost put money in and come out ahead if you bank that there'll be another one in 10 minutes. So I'll look at that and see what I can come up with.
Okay, any more questions for Nick on the emergency communications report? Okay. Derek, do we need to do a motion to approve that report? I mean, there's nothing on there about that, so it's just a report, right?
Just an informational report.
Right. Okay, now you want to go back to the year-end activity report for EMS?
Okay, now we'll go to page 4 and start in. My thing I'd really like to do is break down and look at and look at data, as you guys can tell, but I like to look at trends and see where we're at, because, you know, some days you can have bigger days than others, but what's the trend look like? And that's why on 4, I told you, it's kind of busy, but I went all the way back to 2004, and I keep that data just so we can get a good steady trend line of what it looks like. And you can see we hit a pretty good spike up to about 2015. We kind of plateaued off the last couple of years. We'll see what comes in for the next year, but you can see that trend's been pretty consistent. The percent on page 5, the percentages have been pretty level for your South Ottawa, North Ottawa, across the board there on our townships. But you look at the actual call numbers, which is the one below that, there's been a drastic increase in the south side of Ottawa. As we go through this, I'm going to break out next year, plus I broke out in this one. I took the transfers out because traditionally we put transfers in that South Ottawa, and to get a real idea of what the 911 calls look like or the responses in that, I pulled the transfer data out, and we'll see that here in a minute, but I know that's one of the questions, how many more transfers have come out, and we have seen an increase in those. So we'll look at that in a minute. But you can see North Ottawa has continued to have a little bit of growth too. Call types, which is page 6. We have held pretty steady on medical emergencies, and you can look at transfers and you can see we've went up on transfers, and that's what I have a feeling that data for the South Ottawa looks like. That's why I broke it out. So that gives you a different one. Page 7 is our call time report. And again, this is a busy one, but I kind of like to see the trends of all the years that I'm keeping the data from. So you look at 10-year data here, you can see that trend go up and down and what it looks like. We're still seeing at 8 o'clock, we're starting to kick in, and it usually goes till about 7 or 8 o'clock at night. Those are a pretty peak. Page 8 is just the overall picture of what 17 looked like. You can see the hospitals we transported to. One thing I want to point out, and this is something that's really a problem throughout Kansas, but it's been a problem with Franklin County that we've just been involved in it. We've had a lot of conversations is site transfers. We were doing quite a few of them. As you can see, we were going to Cottonwood, we were going to Two Rivers, we were going to these places. Insurance decided that they were done paying for it, because if it's a voluntary transfer going to a non-hospital facility, it's not paid. So you're going to see a big drop of these, because we had to stop doing them. Which is what that's really done, is put the community in a pretty bad position, because how do we transport these people who want to go get the help, but there's no means to do it, or they may not have the finances to do it. When we have our CIT meetings, these are a lot of conversations that come up. How many patients is the hospital holding that need to be involuntary admits because there's not beds for them? So I'm sure that this is going to be something you guys continue to see come across or hear in the paper of a lot of it. So I see in 2018 a lot of these dropping. The only ones we can transport to now that are psych are hospital-based, like St. John's. If it's Jerry Psych, they're getting medications, they're getting something to do it, so we can do those. But if it's going to your standalone psych facilities, we can't transport to those anymore. And that's just been a change this last year. So breaking down on 9, you can see, like I said, I highlighted ransom because as we go on throughout the report, you'll be able to see a 10-year report on that too. 2017 on page 10, that's the nursing homes. That's also, you can see that's where we have our St. John's, our center points, those. You can see the increases from the previous years on some of the data, but it's not on this that I have if you want it. On page 11, this really breaks out the refusals. So I got arrows highlighting what the refusals are, what we look at. One thing that we really have put emphasis on, you remember we brought on the community paramedic position, we were doing over 50 or 60 calls a year for diabetics. We had a bunch of diabetic people in the community that were calling because their sugar was low. We'd give them medicine, they'd refuse. We've cut that down below half with some of the efforts we've had, so that has been a successful change for us. On page 12, this is the one where I've got from 2004 to 2017, so you can see the hospital drop-off. So you can see, like in 2010 is when we were taking a lot more patients directly to the city. Shortly after that, the ER started changing. They brought in their ER certified doctors, and you can see the trend coming up now with that. But throughout, since 2004, Ransom has got 60% of our patients dropped off. Olathe Medical Center, you can follow that trend line across too, and you can see in 2010, that was one of our peak times of taking them patients, in 11, and then it kind of went down, and we are seeing that increase back up. So just good data to see where our ambulances are dropping patients off, because if we start seeing that going on up the road or anything, we're going to have more times where our trucks are out, which increases our chances of status zeros. So we have to weigh that stuff. 12 is the revenue report. This gives you a good overview of the last 12 months. Current charges in 2017, we billed out for services $1,907,543.79. We had $1,129,503.71 in collections. The adjustments were $623,1880. We sent $255,434.17 to collections. The add-in is when we send somebody to collections, like state set-off or anything, we take them out of our AR. So that's wrote out. So if we do get paid on those, we have to add that back in. So that comes in as an add-in. So that's money that we've put out of the books that we had to bring back in to be able to keep everything average. We started with an AR of $301,053.28. Our AR at the end of 17 was $257,238.10. So that's how much we're carrying on the books. Page 15, and I'm about done. Looks at our revenues since 2005. So we can go back and look at what we've made, what we billed from then. Also looks at collection rates. This is one way of figuring collection rates, and this is the way I've always filled it. A lot of ways to look at it now is your adjustments are money you're never going to collect. That's money that you have to mandatorily write off for Medicaid. You have to do it for. So these collection rates show that it's something we could have collected. If you break out and you take that out of it, so you subtract the total billed from the adjustments and then divide it by your collections, we're really at about an 88 to a 90% collection rate, which is really good for what we are. This, like I said, trends throughout the year. We didn't start using the state collections and separating that out until 2007 when I took over. So the problem is we're having to write more off, and that's coming from our Medicaids, and you can see that in every month how much we write off. State set-off, since we've been tracking the state set-off, we put $1,600,000 in that for collections. Since 2007, we've received $321,371 back. So we've had a 21% collection rate on that money that's out there. We started using Midwest Collections in 2015. You can see we put about $150,000 in that one with about a 5%, 4% return on that. And that's hard to collect that. That's no Social Security number. It's out of state, out of county people that we may not have the information on. The last page is where I told you I was going to break down our 2000. I've got 18 on here. I don't know what it's actually 2017 numbers. I'm sorry. We had for ambulance service fees, we had $1,800,000 $83,541.47. So that is what we collected on ambulance transports. Education classes, these are the classes we teach for like Overland Park, the classes that we've got Olathe, those underneath us, we've brought in $33,575. When I put the community education position on, I agreed to pay $25,000 of that budget, or be able to, I said I could make that much more. It's taken us some time, but we are $8,000 over that this year, so we did really good. The reimbursements, that is money that we pay out of our budget. So with having Johnson County Community College and a lot of the places underneath us, we have to buy the cards. So they call and say, I need $2,000 in cards. We buy them out of our budget. That comes in as reimbursements. So we have bought $12,000 worth of stuff that's been reimbursed to us. So really, if you look at the overall of what we came in over our budget that we had told you, we said is $267,096.47. So that's the end of my report. Is there any questions on any of that?
Questions? Comments?
I have a question, and it's not necessarily about this report, but obviously your revenues have been growing. It's apparent that you're getting busier. At what point are you going to need to expand or face declining service times? I mean, how close do you think we are to that point where we need to add another ambulance?
I don't see us having to add another ambulance. The only thing I can see in the future, if we continue to look at the data, is right now we have 2 float positions. Those positions are people that come in and work Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, or Wednesday, Friday, Sunday. And those are about a 42-hour-a-week position that covers sick and vacation, is what I could actually see as those positions rolling over into a 24-hour shift to give us the coverage of 8. We're not hitting a point where we're having 4 trucks out consistently, but with the increase of transfers going farther away, and if you look at the December report, we're going to Shawnee Mission more than we were that, and that's going to be a trend. That's coming down the pipes. As taking more up there, we're seeing it on our data. So that's going to put more out. So it might be a point where we look at adding an extra person, but we've already got 2 of those people, so it'd be transferring and adding 1. But as far as ambulances, we got 5 now. I don't see that being an expense coming. We are scheduled to remount. I'll be in front of you probably next week on that. But I don't see that expense coming for a while. We have been good with financials as far as building our equipment reserve, so we do have the money available if and when we have to do that. So we have been able to be financially responsible with that. But the only thing I can see is we're looking real hard at the data of how many times we're status 0, how many times we have 3 trucks out, and that's the only concern I have coming down. But right now, I think we're just in the look at it phase.
I have a question. With all the improvements that the hospital over here has done, and the adding of doctors and so forth, why are our numbers going up to transports like the Shawnee Mission and Overland Park and so forth?
We honestly saw this coming. When you put board certified emergency room doctors in there, they can handle more emergency situations. So the patients we were taking initially, as you can see in 2010, directly to Overland Park, directly to Olathe, can come here now. They can get stabilized. They can get treatment. Where we have that shortfall is being able to admit them. Right now, the hospitalist group at the hospital is the family practice doctors. So if somebody's on a vent, they don't have an intensivist that can handle ventilated patients for a long period of time. Or if they have increased cardiac enzymes, up until recently, they didn't have cardiologist coverage every day. So they had to be transported. So their trauma, their level 4 trauma center, which if you look at the trauma systems in the state, level 4 feeds level 3 feeds level 2. We were taking a lot of our patients directly to Overland Park. Now they're coming here, they're finding out, okay, they need care that's over and we're taking them out. But I think the biggest reason is they don't have the hospitalists that can keep some of the sicker patients that now they're seeing in their ER, so they're having to send them out. And I know working with them on neuro, like stroke-like patients, it's with us having the partnership with KU where we take patients here, they get TPA, they're showing stroke-like symptoms, they're showing these problems. We're then taking them to KU. A lot of their symptoms are resolving because we got the quick TPA on board that clot's dissolving. They may be normal at KU, but they still need that neurology consult. So I know they're working on some telemedicine, some options like that to hopefully be able to keep these patients that we know have like small vessel occlusions that should treat and we should be able to keep them. So this data here should give them the data to show that they need to, that they could support these services. I don't know, but that's my take on it.
Nick, they just changed, I think, affiliations. They used to do a lot more with Olathe Med, and now they've gone more with the Shawnee Mission. So I think when you have that affiliation with those doctors out of that group, you're going to see a lot more transports to that particular hospital, aren't you?
And with them affiliating with the cardiology group, anything that needs treatment above what they can do here will go to Shawnee Mission. And that's what we've seen at the cardiology stuff.
Anything else for Nick? Okay, Nick, thanks for that report. I think it's very eye-opening in some ways, but it's certainly very informative of comparing the trends and what we have, and appreciate your keeping on top of that and looking down the road so we can see in advance what we may be needing to do or not do.
Let me give you these.
Okay.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Next item on our agenda is approve the authorizing the chairman to execute the contract for the 2018 Chip and Seal project. Jim?
Good morning. Board of County Commissioners awarded the bid to Vance Brothers. Vance Brothers have completed the contracts and bonds and returned them. They're now ready to be executed by the county. The request is a motion authorizing the chairman to execute the contract for the 2018 Chip Seal project.
Okay. Look for a motion then to approve that authorization.
Make a motion that we authorize the chairman to execute the contract for the 2018 Chip and Seal project.
Sorry.
Commissioner Howard?
Yes.
Commissioner Waymire?
Yes.
Commissioner Oglesby?
Yes.
Commissioner Dunn?
Yes.
Chair Renaud.
Yes. All right, next item, consider for approval authorizing the solicitation of bids when easements have been acquired for Proximity Park. Jim?
Purchasing policy requires the Board of County Commissioners approve the plans for projects in excess of $25,000. The plans have been furnished by Bartlett and West and are available in the Public Works Administrative Office for examination. The request is a motion approving the plans for Proximity Park and authorizing solicitation of bids when the remaining easements have been acquired.
You expect those easements to be acquired pretty quickly?
I have no idea how soon that might be, sir.
Okay.
I've been told that we're really close since January.
Okay.
And we've had correspondence with both parties, just
Could be
this
any
week.
time.
So,
Okay.
it could be any time, but as Jim has alluded to, this is something that has taken some time. And so the reason we have this in front of the board today is that on the county's end, we're trying to make sure that we're being as efficient as possible so that when we have these easements, we don't have to wait an extra week to get back in front of the board. We can just go at that point and start advertising.
There's no wisdom in going and soliciting bids before we wrap up that? I mean, construction wouldn't start instantly, I guess, but.
That's something, the pure solicitation of bids doesn't bind us to do anything, so I'm not sure. That's something Jim and I can talk about. I don't know that there would be a harm in doing that, and then, you know, there'd have to be a caveat in that says, you know,
Well, once we accept it, there'd have to be a caveat just to get a price, not even.
yeah.
I would agree that quicker we can move on getting those bids out there would be very beneficial, so if that could be done.
I'll tell you what, Jim and I will talk about that here after the meeting, and I very well might call Darren Ammon with Bartlett just to
Sure.
get another perspective on it. And yeah, if we can do that, we absolutely will. I mean, 'cause it's clear in every bid we solicit that it's not a contract, it's not an offer, it's just a solicitation.
Okay,
Do you recommend that we remove the word easements then, that have been acquired then, Derek, out of that motion? And just authorize the solicitation of bids?
Or authorize the administrator to,
Yeah, you can just authorize the solicitation of bids today, and then Jim and I, after doing our due diligence, will proceed to do that as we see. I think Commissioner Oglesby, I appreciate that. That's very clever. I think that is the better approach, so.
just leave those last few words off that motion.
Well, yeah, just authorize us to solicit bids. I mean, that's,
I'd make that motion to approve the plans for Proximity Park and authorize the solicitation of bids.
I have a second?
Commissioner Waymire?
yes.
Commissioner Oglesby?
Yes.
Commissioner Dunn?
Yes.
Commissioner Howard?
Yes.
Chair Renaud.
Yes. Hi,
Thank you,
Jim.
Commissioners.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, staff reports. Derek?
yeah, we are, we've talked about this. I've been working closely with our counsel from Stevens and Brand on the tax sale. We are close to, we have to publish that in the local newspaper, publish the properties that are going up, and that is really just the last step before filing the petition. And so if you see that in the newspaper in the upcoming future, you know that that's what we're doing. And so that petition will get filed, and, you know, it'll work its way through the court system at the court's pleasure, and we'll get that taken care of. So I don't believe I have anything else today. So.
Okay. Sheriff?
Morning. We, in Franklin County, are in the Midwest region of HIDA, which HIDA is a high-intensity drug traffic area. It's a federal area that all the agencies that work drug enforcement in that area fall under. Last week, two of our Franklin County drug detectives were recognized by the Midwest HIDA, and one of the cases that they were working on won the award as for the best investigation of the year through HIDA. The case that they worked took down a criminal organization that was operating in Franklin County and some counties around us. So there was a lot of violence with that group here and in Douglas and Shawnee counties. That case also overlapped, and they were able to link that group in with two other criminal organizations. There have been lots of arrests and several hundred months of sentencing that has already taken place on that, and they were recognized at the U.S. Attorney's Office. And so we just wanted to congratulate them, and it's what they did there was just indicative to the work that they do all the time. Also, last Saturday, the Sheriff's Office and the Police Department teamed up, and we taught a active killer response training. We used the ALICE system, and we did that at a local church here. It was open to the community. We had 85 people that showed up for that, and we spent about 5 hours out there training them. We had a good time, and a lot of learning took place. There were some questions that were asked, and I've heard some of those as well from within the county organization, so to let you guys know. In response, I won't get into what happened down in Florida with that school shooting in particular, but because of that, questions have been asked to me. I will tell you that locally, we do train to go in and address the threat. We also are fortunate, our EMS, well, Nick's gone, but Chief Robbins and some of his staff have gone and done some additional training as well. And so our fire departments, EMS, and law enforcement we train on. One of the concerns was that medical personnel were told to stage outside, not go in. We train how to go in with them to do some rescue stuff. It's stuff that we hope we never have to use, but we're trying to be as prepared as we possibly can be. And so we do have that going on, and we work with emergency management organizes some training, some actual exercises for us to all get together, and it helps us evaluate how we're doing on those things. And so just wanted you guys to know we are working to be as prepared as we can in those areas. And if you guys have any questions for me, I'd be happy to answer them.
I have one, Jeff. At the Wellsville City Council meeting last Wednesday night, the DARE program, the county's no longer going to be doing that, I think, and the Wellsville PD is going to take it over. What precipitated that, or how that came about?
Wellsville has an officer that is DARE certified instructor, and she and our DARE officer have been team teaching a little bit on that, and she was wanting to take over teaching in that school if it was at all possible, and so we've met on that. And Wellsville, the Wellsville DARE officer will have the primary responsibility up there. I think there still may be a little bit of team teaching that goes on with that, and we'll still be involved, but the primary responsibility of that will fall on Officer Foltz up at Wellsville, and that was just at their request.
Okay.
So.
Thank you. Okay, Alan?
Good morning. I've got several things on my list this morning. Derek had asked me to give you an update on the radio system. The equipment out at the tower sites, our infrastructure equipment, has been installed. They're finalizing everything this week out at the tower sites. We actually have equipment running at 2 of our sites right now. It takes about 30 days for what they call a burn-in period with that equipment. So they've got it up and operational. Radios are not able to touch it yet. Some of that is due to some programming. Motorola is supposed to be here today and the rest of the week doing programming at our tower sites. They're also working, we've got the AT&T fiber link to the state system, and they're attaching equipment and testing all of that to make sure the links are set at the proper measurements or standards that they need to run our system. We also hope to complete this week the link from dispatch to the main site, which will hook it to the state core, which runs our dispatch center will run a whole lot different than what it is now. Inside dispatch, they won't know any difference, but our dispatch center will be attached to the state system through these links. Programming of radios, we've met, had several meetings. We've got the fleet map developed. They're working on what they call the keys for the radios, and we're going to try to program 3 or 4 portables for each agency and get those handed out so that the agencies can look at how they're programmed. What we don't want to do is program 700 radios and there be a little glitch in there that's a problem and then have to reprogram 700 radios. So we're going to cut down on that number and get those out for a test bed of radios for everybody to look at for a couple weeks and get back with us before we program the others. Also, the last couple weeks, thanks to Jim and his crew, they've been putting rock at our tower sites where we've had some areas that have washed out, and we haven't added any rock since we've built the towers 10 years ago. So that's being done. Also, we added 2 of the sites that are out in the middle of pastures. We put new fence in. The posts had rotted off, and the fence was not holding the cattle in, so we replaced the fence, and they put some rock around there, and hopefully the rock that they added in there will keep the cows from rubbing against the fence also. We put some bigger rock around the outside, and what we were noticing when we did that, we also spray the tower sites to keep the weeds off and away from our equipment. It was causing some dead spots outside of our fence area, and this rock will help take care of that and makes it look a lot better. I've got, I think it's first of the week, we'll go out and make sure we've got all that rock set on our sites and everything. The dispatch consoles, they're going to try to program them later this week. If they get the tower sites done, they have to be attached to the state system so they can do that programming. If not, that should occur next week. Hopefully, we do have training scheduled for, we're doing 2 different types of training. Motorola is providing the training for the dispatchers on how to run the new consoles. That date's set the last week of March. We also have a date set for the state Office of Emergency Communications to come down and train 10 to 20 people in our county that can go out and talk about how our portables and our mobile radios operate, so we can go out to the individual agencies and do hands-on training with that. That's also scheduled the end of March. Hopefully, fingers crossed, we'll start the install of mobile radios in April, weather permitting, programming getting all complete, and we get the approval from the agencies back. This is the way they want their radios programmed. We're hoping in April we can start installing the mobiles into the vehicles and the equipment. If that takes place, we're looking at a cutover time sometime in May. Again, we still got some moving parts, so I'm hoping that sometime in May we can do the cutover from our current system to the new 800 system. Then once that cutover occurs, we're not done yet with the project, because we have to remove all the equipment, the old equipment, off of our towers and clean up the insides of the buildings and that type of stuff. With that being said, we're also meeting, Tom and I have been meeting with the surrounding counties. We got another meeting this week with 6 of the counties to come up with our interoperability and how our policies and procedures and how we program some of our radios and some of the equipment and dispatch so that we can talk to the surrounding counties easier than we're able to now. So that's ongoing. And one of the things we were told yesterday from the state, which made me feel pretty good, and I think should make everybody in the county feel pretty good, is we've got several other counties that have made phone calls to our office wanting to know how we've done the project, how we funded it, how we went about the process. The state Office of Emergency Communications also told us that our fleet map is being handed out to other counties as a model. They really like the way we're doing things in Franklin County, so I think that kind of puts us on the forefront of moving to P25. And I know we've made the right step in doing this, because as we're looking at the FirstNet systems that are coming on for LTE, there's going to be interoperability between the radio system that we're installing, and at some point in the future, I would almost bet you our smartphones, we can talk on our radio system with that, with the new technology that's coming out. So I'm very confident that we're making the right move going into the future with the system that we've bought. With that being said, do you have any questions on the radio system?
Very informative, thank you.
Okay, I've got some other things that we've got working in my office also. This Thursday, if you follow us on Facebook, we've had posts on there, and I believe it's on the county website also, and with COFO. This Thursday at 7 p.m. at the Ottawa Memorial Auditorium, the severe weather awareness and storm spotter training will take place. The public is welcome to attend that. It's very informative as to explains the difference between warnings and watches and all the information for severe weather awareness. Next Tuesday, and the sheriff alluded to this a little bit, where we're helping with exercises for the active shooting scenarios. We've got an exercise at Ottawa University next Tuesday, 8:30 to 11:30. All first responders in the county, all the schools, some of the large businesses. We've invited over 100 people to participate in that tabletop exercise. There's been some questions come up in the last 2 or 3 weeks, and I think the incident in Florida prompted that, as far as roles and responsibilities for everybody. And that's what our exercise is going to key on, is everybody's roles and responsibilities, so that everyone knows what everybody else should be doing, what their responsibilities are. You're welcome to attend if you want to come by. Also, in April, we've got another exercise that'll be a full-scale exercise up in Wellsville for the Wellsville School District. And there's ongoing training, as the sheriff alluded, not only for the law enforcement, but also fire and EMS. And they're attending that training before the exercise, and then it'll be a graded exercise and it'll be evaluated. And there's from what I heard yesterday at one of the planning meetings, we'll have over 100 participants in that exercise also. So we're preparing, and like the sheriff said, hopefully we don't have to use it here, but again, I'm confident the way that we're doing the training and looking forward that we'll be better prepared as we do that. Then in April, if you'll remember, we applied for the Hazardous Materials Emergency Preparedness Grant and got accepted for that this last fall. We're working with our contractor, EFM Consulting, to update our emergency operations plan. So there'll be meetings going on through the late spring and summer with all of the partners for our emergency operations plan and our local emergency planning committee to get that plan updated by the 1st of September. And hopefully in August or September, I'll be bringing that plan to the commission to review and to approve our plan. Any questions?
Alan, do you do any training on controlled burning?
Yes, we work with the fire departments to do that. We also, we don't do it every year, but last year we had a controlled burn seminar with Kansas, K-State. They had somebody come down and talk to the ranchers, and we've already had discussions about doing that again. We don't have time to do it because burn season is starting. But one of the things we did do that came out of the after action from last year because of the large wildfires out west last year is develop strike teams or task forces, which is a group of 5 or 6 fire units. We've talked with all the fire chiefs in the county, and they have agreed to provide fire equipment to go beyond our normal mutual aid response, which some of our fire departments respond to the counties just next to us and go just part way into that county. But if we get a request from the state for a large wildfire, then the fire chiefs will make the decision whether we send our firefighting resources outside of our normal mutual aid response also. And with that, it will be a collective effort of all of our fire departments in the county to send that equipment and personnel.
Anything else?
Yeah, while he's up here, he made a comment about kind of Franklin County being seen as being on the forefront of this radio transition, and that's absolutely the case. But Allen is also seen statewide as a resource for emergency management in general. And that's something I think he should be very proud of. I think you all should be proud of. We've talked about Nick before and the ambulance department and how they're seen as one of the better departments in the state. And his education department is literally, we've got people coming down in droves from Johnson County signing up for that. And so we routinely get calls about our personnel manual from other counties who want to use that as a template to kind of when they're restructuring theirs. And so the goal is to have every one of our departments be seen as a resource that other governments can, imitate, and that's going to take some time, but certainly I think progress is being made, and Alan is one of our employees who's been at the very, one of the driving factors in that, and so I appreciate that.
Thanks, Derek.
Good comments, Derek. Okay, thank you, Alan.
Thank you.
James, anything?
Morning, Commissioners. Just a couple things. You may have already seen it in the paper, and some of you have known that FCDC's been working on a restaurant project to kind of go with the hotel development here on the south side of Ottawa. At the Ottawa City Planning Commission last week, we kind of cleared a major hurdle that was kind of a sticking point there for a while. While there's still some things to finalize, we are in the process of getting everything done. That restaurant is an Arby's, and so we're excited that that's going to be coming to the community as well, in addition to the hotel project. So for anybody that's keeping track, that's approximately about $11 million in capital investment between the two projects that should be completed over the course of the next 12 months. And so other than that, we did finalize the date for our FCDC Spring Investors Briefing. That's going to be April 12th over at Ottawa University. Sherry should be sending out information about that here shortly. So if you guys can make it, there will be an update on kind of what's going on with FCDC. We're working on finalizing a speaker to hopefully talk about what's going on in the region. And then also, we are scheduled to have completed by that point. We've been working on a new promo/marketing video for Proximity Park that should be completed at that point and be unveiled at that Spring Investors Briefing on the 12th. So,
James, any rough idea on the number of jobs that restaurant project also brings?
it's going to be in the 15 to 20 range again, obviously most of them being part-time jobs. But that's
Total project, we're looking at around 30 jobs?
Yeah, 30 to 40, just depending on everything. So direct jobs, not counting the construction jobs that'll be going on while it's being built, and then if there's any other indirect jobs that are created because we've got more activity going on there. Thank you.
Jim.
We've received the field check plans for the off-system bridge on Pawnee west of Eisenhower. Anticipate field check will take place towards the end of this month. I've received 60% plans for the 59 Kingman intersection, which is the remainder of the Proximity Park construction. We'll be looking at those to see what, if anything, needs to be revised on them as they move towards completion and eventual bidding.
All right.
The rest of the folks are patching holes, blading roads.
All right. Janet? Okay, commissioner comments. Rick? Roy? Rich?
I went to the Princeton City meeting on Monday night. They had concerns about dog leash laws. A citizen came in. Apparently there's a pit bull or part pit bull that's running loose, terrorizing some of the citizens down there, and concerned about how they're currently without any animal control until Johnny gets back in their town, whether or not that's something if the sheriff's office would respond to or not, and how that might take place. And I think there was some discussion. They hope that Johnny will be able to get some of those corrected when he gets back. The health department was there to present their Pathways program to the city of Princeton, and I think they were very receptive to that, being able to look forward to helping provide some playground equipment and create more activity within their community. They had a lot of discussion about maintenance issues, and then the big thing that really comes out, it seems like every time that I go, is that they always have code enforcement issues, and without a court process, being able to do that, how they enforce those. And the mayor reported that he's met with other mayors within the county, and they're looking at this court process that might take place of being able to justify a judge and court clerk to be able to provide those services for those smaller communities, which I think would be a big benefit to trying to keep things in a lot better perspective for those smaller communities. That's it.
Okay, last Wednesday night, I attended the Wellsville City Council meeting, and also the wellness plan, or the Blue Cross Blue Shield money, the funds, the grants coming through here. Sheila Robertson was there to talk about the walkability plan, their funding, and trying to create a walking path connecting there. And of course, the DARE program that came up. Then last Monday night, I was at the Rantoul City Council meeting, and those small towns are just identical in what they're discussing on those things. You know, they have the dogs and a leash ordinance, their water system, law enforcement, speeding, or whatever else it might be. They did talk about a bid on their city hall roof. Talk about replacing water meters. Their 4th of July celebration, they ordered some fireworks for that. Making sure they had a liability insurance policy. Their Easter egg hunt coming up. I think it's going to be on March 24th. And also the county dump date and city dog tags and taxes and that type of stuff. So they pretty much covered what they did at their meeting. Okay, we have a meeting today from 11 o'clock to 1 with the health. That's going to be here. Okay. In other words, I look for a motion for adjournment.
Make the motion.
Second.
All right, motion and second to adjourn. All in favor? We are adjourned.